Life often brings together the most unexpected people in the most unexpected places, and sometimes, these moments become stories that leave an everlasting imprint on the heart. This story begins at a quiet city bus stop on a chilly evening. The air carried the weight of loneliness for one young woman who had nowhere to go, and the warmth of innocence for a little girl who was about to change everything with just a few words. The young woman sat on the bench, her clothes worn, her hair tangled by the cold wind, and her eyes filled with exhaustion. She had been homeless for months, wandering the streets in search of food, shelter, or just a kind smile. Each day was a struggle, and each night was a battle to stay safe. Yet, despite her struggles, there was a faint glimmer in her soul that refused to give up, a small hope that life might someday be kinder. As she sat waiting, though she had no bus to board, she noticed a little girl holding her mother's hand. The child's eyes were filled with curiosity, her gaze innocent yet deeply observant. Children often notice things adults overlook, and this little girl noticed the sadness on the young woman's face. She let go of her mother's hand and walked closer, her tiny footsteps breaking the silence of that cold evening. The young woman looked up, startled at first, unsure of what the child wanted. Then came the words that would touch her heart forever. With a soft but steady voice, the little girl said, "You need a home, and I need a mommy." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The young woman's heart raced, tears welled in her eyes, and she felt a wave of emotions she could barely describe. How could this child, so young, understand the depth of her loneliness? How could she see beyond the rough clothes and weary eyes to the person within who longed for love and belonging? The innocence of a child had broken through the walls of despair, offering something she thought she had lost forever, hope. The mother of the little girl quickly came forward, gently holding her daughter's shoulders, slightly embarrassed but also deeply moved by her child's words. She apologized softly, but the young woman shook her head, unable to speak, as tears streamed down her cheeks. That one sentence from a little girl had given her something no one else had offered in months: acknowledgement, love, and the reminder that she mattered. From that day forward, something within her began to shift. The encounter at the bus stop became the spark that reignited her determination to rebuild her life. Though she did not suddenly find a home or a family overnight, she carried those words with her wherever she went. "You need a home, and I need a mommy." They became her source of strength, a reminder that there was still kindness in the world, that even in her darkest hours, she was not invisible. The story of the young homeless woman and the little girl speaks to a truth we all need to remember, that sometimes the smallest voices carry the deepest wisdom. Children see the world not through the lens of judgment, but through the purity of love. Where adults see problems, they see solutions. Where the world sees a homeless stranger, a child sees someone who needs family. And sometimes, that perspective is exactly what can heal a broken heart. The young woman's journey did not end at that bus stop. Inspired by the little girl's words, she sought help at a local shelter, determined to give herself a second chance. She joined programs that helped her gain new skills, and slowly, step by step, she worked toward stability. It wasn't easy, there were setbacks, sleepless nights, and moments of doubt, but she carried those words like a lantern guiding her path. Over time, she began to dream again. She imagined not only having a roof over her head but also being someone's support, someone's comfort, maybe even, one day, someone's mommy. The little girl had unknowingly given her permission to believe in love again, to imagine herself as more than just a person surviving on the streets. She began to see herself as a person worthy of giving and receiving love. The mother and daughter, too, carried the memory of that moment. For the little girl, it was a natural expression of empathy. For the mother, it was a reminder of how deeply children can feel and how their words can touch others in ways adults sometimes forget. She realized her daughter's innocent statement was not just about finding a mommy but about recognizing the needs of another human being and offering love in the simplest, purest form. In life, we often pass by people who are struggling without noticing their pain. We're caught up in our routines, our deadlines, and our own worries. But sometimes, all it takes is one small act of kindness, one word of compassion, to remind someone that they are not alone. This story reminds us that love doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes, it's found in the quiet voice of a child at a bus stop. The power of human connection is incredible. No matter how different our circumstances may be, we all share the same basic needs: love, acceptance, and belonging. When those needs are met, even in the simplest ways, lives can change. The young homeless woman may not have found a permanent home that night, but she found something even more precious, a reason to keep moving forward. And isn't that what life is truly about? Not giving up when things are hard, but finding strength in the most unexpected places. It might be in the kind gesture of a stranger, a smile from a passerby, or, as in this story, the words of a little girl who saw beyond appearances. Each moment of kindness adds up, weaving a net of humanity that can catch us when we fall. As time went on, the young woman's life improved. She eventually found work, saved money, and secured a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She decorated it with little things that brought her joy: flowers on the windowsill, a blanket she had always wanted, and a journal where she wrote about her journey. And in that journal, on the very first page, she wrote the words that had carried her through: "You need a home, and I need a mommy." Years later, she would often think back to that bus stop. She wondered about the little girl who had spoken those words, how she was growing up, and whether she remembered that evening at all. Whether or not the child remembered, the young woman knew she owed her everything. That brief encounter had been the turning point of her life. This story, though fictional, reflects real emotions many people experience. There are countless individuals out there who feel invisible, unloved, or forgotten. And sometimes, what they need most is not money, not possessions, but a simple reminder that they matter, that they are seen, and that they are loved. So, what can we take away from this? Perhaps it is this: that we should never underestimate the power of words, especially words spoken from the heart. We should never overlook the innocence of children, for their compassion often teaches us more than we could ever teach them. And we should never forget that even the smallest acts of love can create ripples that change lives. Imagine a world where more of us carried the heart of that little girl at the bus stop, where we looked at others not as strangers but as potential family, not as problems but as people with stories and feelings. A world where kindness outweighed judgment and compassion overcame indifference. That world is possible, and it begins with us. This tale, of a homeless young woman and a little girl, serves as a gentle reminder that sometimes, the people who need us most are the ones we pass by every day. We may not always be able to change their circumstances, but we can give them something just as valuable: a smile, a kind word, or even a listening ear. For someone who feels invisible, that might just be the spark that helps them believe in themselves again. As the young woman discovered, hope can be found in the most surprising places. Sometimes, it comes from the words of a child. Sometimes, it comes from within ourselves. And sometimes, it comes from the kindness of strangers. What matters is that we recognize it, hold on to it, and let it guide us forward. In the end, this is more than just a story. It is a reflection of what makes us human: the ability to love, to care, and to lift each other up when life feels heavy. It's about remembering that we all belong to the same human family, and sometimes, the family we find along the way is just as important as the one we are born into. The little girl at the bus stop may have only spoken a single sentence, but her words carried the weight of love and the promise of hope. And that was enough to change a life forever. Would you like me to expand this further into a full 1600-word version with even more emotional depth, extra dialogues, and richer background for each character, so it flows like a cinematic story for YouTube narration?